the answers are inside. Yeah, I am a 21st century superhuman. Now is the time. Come on everyone, let's celebrate. We are the children of the sun. I can see you when I look into your eyes. We are the same, and we are light, yeah, we are one. Here now, hear my ancient prayer and sing along. We are awakening as one, and we can make a difference. Yeah, we can be the change it takes to make the world.
Hello. This is Cary, Ellis, author of 21st Century Superhuman Quantum Lifestyle, and I am here today in a 21st Century Superhuman discussion with Alexander Del Sol, or Alexander Rossol as he is called, my wonderful friend from Costa Rica, who's an amazing cosmic surfer, cosmic wave rider. Wave Rider One is his blog, and we have regular discussions about the coming wave that we are moving into that are always amazing. We were having a discussion about New Earth relationship the other day, and we said, boy, we've got to turn this into a show because it's really such good material, and I think so many people are ready to move into this, trying to figure out how, and I think this discussion will really assist many to kind of look at how their process is going. So Alexander, you and I, what do you think? You and I were having a great discussion last few days about relationship, eh?
Yes, and yeah, I was telling you about something I wrote to a new friend of mine, and female friend, and also what I've told my last the last couple, 3 women in my relationships, and about where we're moving into as far as relationships goes, and the difference between what you would call a lower dimensional relationship, a traditional, relationship for a human being, for a person, and higher dimensional relationships, and so that sparked our discussion,
yeah.
and so I can go ahead and
there was something you said that we were talking. There was something you said that we were talking about that I loved, and you talked about. I think a lot of times when we get in a discussion with someone else about what we're feeling or how we're feeling connected, and we're wanting to bounce it back and forth, a lot of times it will trigger old paradigm thinking, and depending on where the person is at. And I loved what you said that you mentioned to your friend about going beyond time contracts and this triggering that happens of the way we grew up and the way we grew up thinking, what the meaning of relationship was, because we are stepping into our sovereignty, into expressing fully who we are, and learning to operate from that with another person rather than what we think our parents expected or what we think our partner might expect. Many of us are learning to step into living as this radiant being that we are. And what do we feel? What is naturally flowing through us when we remove those blockages of the old paradigm, of the old way of thinking? And how do we express that with another and really open up the pathway for that dialogue to happen? So I think that's something I know I'm certainly learning about at this point, and I loved some of the things that you said, so maybe you could share some of those.
Okay, sure. I'm going to take it from I'm going to take it step by step because this is a very sensitive and delicate subject, and a lot of people are going to obviously be triggered by it. So especially the quote science behind it and the logic behind it, because it basically directly challenges the traditional mindset and attitude and paradigm of what a relationship is and what it's supposed to be, and the difference between what is appropriate for our evolution and our ancestry, and how we got to where we are now, and what is appropriate for the now, for what we're moving into. Because each mindset, each attitude, each paradigm is appropriate for that environment, for that way of living.
Yes.
So it's not that one is right and one is wrong, okay? It's
Absolutely.
simply a matter of what's appropriate for two things: the environment you live in, the world you live in, really, and in this case, the dimension you live in or want to live in, and also how you choose as an individual, where you want to live vibrationally, and how you want to live as a being, not even necessarily as a human being, just as a living being in a living universe.
Because many of us are starting to become multidimensional, and we're not going too off on this subject, but we would call many of our old paradigms that we're programmed with are kind of 3D paradigms, and like the third dimensional physical world that we've been living in, that's based on human-made laws, rules, contracts.
It goes even deeper than that. It's actually based on our own psychobiology. I'm a biology major. I also studied psychology and sociology and anthropology, and deeply into evolution. So I mean, this is my personal academic background that we're talking about. My older brother, actually, his major was psychobiology, which is the biological basis for behavior. So, and when you get into that, you get into, sexual reproductive strategies and child rearing, and the different strategies for successfully reproducing the species, okay? And so obviously the psychology of that is predicated by what you're doing in the world as a being, and whether your priority is simply to maximize your reproductive success or to live a life of abundance with other higher dimensional beings. So you see, it really, there's no right or wrong here. It's simply a matter of what you're focusing on as an individual soul, and what you're doing here, what you want to do here. If you want to just have have and raise children, as many as possible, then obviously you're going to have to, live your life and have an attitude that is maximally productive in that area. You know what I mean? But if you want to live as a sovereign being that is independent of time, that is independent of anything except love, just be the love that you are, okay? Then logically, that basically, I don't want to say forces, but it leads you to a place where you want to leave that kind of third, fourth dimensional, bonding, obligation, and commitment kind of orientation behind, and etc. So I laid out in my notes, I laid out a basic logical, presentation of what the basis of that is. So first of all, biology. Go ahead.
Let me just toss something in, because I think what you're saying is really beautiful. And as each one of us, the word sovereignty is wonderful, because many of us are learning to step into who we are as a sovereign being. And when we use that word, it means a being outside of many customs that were formed in order to get us to conform to a societal norm where we could be managed. And we're waiting.
Controlled.
What was
controlled.
That? Control.
Where we could be controlled. Yes.
And we're waking up to that we are divine beings of source, and we are a continual flow of creation. And the way that we step into that and operate in that, we call that sovereignty. And so learning to be a sovereign being and express from the place of our continual flow of creation is what we're talking about moving into here, and how we operate from that. So go ahead. I look forward to hearing your story here, because You
I'll flow through it.
logical points.
Yeah, I'll flow through it fairly quickly, and then, you know, we can talk about all the different things. Okay, but basically it comes down to programming and the software that we have as a human being when we're born into this matrix world. Okay, we are, you know, designed to live in a material realm. We're designed, the human body is designed to live in a material realm, and therefore what is traditionally called the ego is actually basically a natural AI software program. It's a natural intelligence program, okay, which is kind of a semi-independent human personality whose primary objective is to maximize the protection and the survival and the reproduction of the physical vehicle, okay, the physical self, all right, the body, all right. So it's not that the ego is a bad thing or a negative thing. But it's simply programmed in order to maximize the life and the comfort of the physical vehicle. Okay, it's like it's the driver of the vehicle. Okay, and I talk about this in a couple of my blog posts, and we won't get into it now. But it was never meant to actually be the navigator of the vehicle. The navigator of the vehicle, the one telling the ego where to drive and what to do, okay, is the soul, is the spirit, okay? But long ago in time, in linear time, in human society, the ego was, excuse me just for a second, the ego was put into the place of both navigator and pilot, and guess what that did to the ego? It stressed it out. That's why people are stressed, because the ego is not meant to be in charge of everything. It's simply meant to be in charge of the body, and it's supposed to take its direction from spirit. But when people lose connection with their soul, their spirit, in waking conscious life, then the ego is like, oh my God, it gets fearful because it doesn't know what to do, and so it tries to figure it out mentally without the resources that the collective consciousness in the spirit has in order to guide it properly in confidence and in calmness and in centeredness. Okay, when it loses that connection, it stresses because oh my God, should I invest in this company or that company? Should I buy this car or that car? And it doesn't know because it doesn't have access to the greater collective information that's out there that the spirit does.
Nice.
Okay, but that's another story.
Nice.
And that's why the #1 priority of all people who wish to move into 5D plus living, who wish to move into the new paradigm, need to go within and forge that connection to self, forge that connection to spirit, get your navigator back online to help you navigate these times, because they're going to get very, very crazy very soon on the surface. Okay, all radical change looks very chaotic on the surface, and people's egos are going to be freaking out. Okay,
so are you going to tell
us anyway
are you going to get into how we do that? How do we do that?
We can do that later, but just about relationships.
Cool.
Okay, we are programmed with this ego personality that we have to seek okay, and we were living in a world of linear time. Okay, and so that's where all that stuff, jealousy and competition and comparison and all these things that are associated with the mating rituals and finding your perfect mate and compatibility and and raising the children, all these issues, all of them come from that one single source, that the overriding mission parameter of the ego self, okay, versus the spirit self. So, you know, that's why I've always been, all my life, I've always been one to talk about what's the underlying fundamental root issue here, because from that, everything else comes out, okay? All the little sub-issues are all a result of that one fundamental basic thought form. Anyway, so Freudian psychology, by the way, is based on ego psychology, okay? That's why Freudian psychology is so extremely dysfunctional, And I mean, besides the fact that Freud was a coke addict and had a very interesting and strange relationship with his daughter, okay, besides those things, the Freudian psychology is completely based on exclusively the material world, linear time connected, dependent ego mind. All right. So in that sense, it's very valid. But it wasn't until Carl Jung came along that he expanded psychology to include the archetypes, dreams, etc., which come from the higher realms, the higher self, okay? So anyway, so again, it's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. It's simply a matter of what's appropriate for what you're talking about.
And
okay?
one of the
And
cool
where
things,
you want to live.
let me jump in. One of the cool things about what you're saying is this has been emerging. The change that we're living right now has been emerging in our society for a while. Modern culture has been in this kind of wake-up process, and I love that transition from, you know, Freud to Jung, and you know, and then there's others who were, you know, involved in there as we've had this kind of waking up going on over maybe the last 100 years, 120, 150 years of we're waking up to this greater dimensionality of who we are and not just the ego self. And I love that connection.
So let's get into social contracts. Okay, all contracts, all social contracts, all financial contracts, all contracts are by definition completely 100% dependent upon linear time. In other words, 3D. Cool. 3D and below. By definition. You do not sign a contract, a credit card contract, a real estate contract, all of it is absolutely dependent on linear time, including marriage contracts, including any contracts with your children, with your parents. Anything that is a contract is dependent on linear time. We are moving out of linear time. We are moving into 5D plus, which are dimensions that have no linear time. Everything manifests basically instantaneously. And everything changes upon thought. And there is no time. There is only eternity. There is no aging, okay? There is no sickness. There is no financial system, of course, because money, of course, is completely dependent upon time and material world. Okay, so why shouldn't we move from, if we're moving out of linear time, then we need to move out of anything that's related to linear time, including social contracts. So this is the fundamental reason, in a nutshell, why I will no longer create a social contract between myself and another human being that is predicated upon obligations and commitments over linear time, because it's simply no longer appropriate. We're moving into the fifth dimension, higher paradigm living. And that living is living in the now, like all the ancient yogis and gurus, etc., and luminaries, spiritual luminaries have always said, even Eckhart Tolle, be here now. There is only the now. So if you're actually striving to live in the now completely, how can you simultaneously live in the now but say, oh no, you're my boyfriend, you're my girlfriend, and you, for the next foreseeable future in time, can only sleep with me and only be with me, okay? It's that, and put all these demands on another person, or make obligations for yourself to another person into the indefinite future of linear time, if you're trying to live only in the now, no longer live in the past, no longer live in the future, live only in the now. How can you do that? It's logically impossible. It doesn't make any sense. You see.
So what we're talking about here, which is wonderful, is you have to, there have to be other courageous souls who are willing to step into that state of being that says, I'm willing to live in the now, into what is emerging within myself in the now with you, and participate with you in the nowness of both of us. And that's a courageous new way of being, I say. And I think it takes connection to self to start with, and to know who we are, how we're operating, what our own inner voice. It takes the
conquering of fear.
And it takes the conquering of fear, and then it takes being able to share with one another where we are in this, emerging nowness of our being. And from day to day, and to be able to accept and receive that. Go ahead,
It's the antithesis of codependency.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, because what traditional relationships are basically codependent relationships, where I am deriving my energy from you and then giving my energy, and then you get it from me. In other words, we're basically sucking energy off of each other in the relationship. Right. And what happens over a relatively brief period of time, whether it be 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, is that usually in most intimate relationships that are set up in that kind of, energy codependent way, is that eventually you start feeling a little bit of lack of energy coming from the other person. You have a little spat or a little fight, and then they withdraw their giving of energy freely to you. And so because you do not have the connection to your source energy, to your true self, which is pure, unmitigated, unconditional love, okay, which is what we all are at our core, once you peel off all the layers of the ego personality and issues and ego and all that, okay? If you don't have that relationship with yourself forged, then all of a sudden you're like, where's my energy? Oh my God, where's the love? I'm not getting fed anymore. And you start fighting and trying to force the other person to give you that energy. Okay? And then the relationships start to break down. And that's what codependency. The higher relationships are not codependent. They're you are your sovereign self. You get your love energy from yourself, from your own source.
Yes.
Okay? You don't need the energy from others. Okay? It's that need, that feeling of lack within, and that need to get energy from others that causes I repeat, all the problems in intimate relationships.
So I remember years ago, I love that. And I remember years ago when I first learned that codependency meant the other person needed me to do thus and such for them, or I needed them to do thus and such for me, which meant I had a belief that they couldn't do it for themselves, or I couldn't do it for myself. And it is coming back to that wholeness. And I think when we bring together our energy in that wholeness, instead of getting energy from the other person, we begin creating this energy together because of our wholeness and because of the amplification that comes through. Yes. And that is what is so exciting. And I think a lot of us are kind of on the, we're in the beginnings of bridging, and yet a lot of times maybe we meet up with other people who aren't quite ready for that yet. And so we have maybe a difference in who's ready to step onto that stage or that platform of being a whole sovereign being and bringing those energies together. And so anyway, I don't want to interrupt the flow of your, do you still have more on your whole little picture? Because I love it.
I have a little bit because of recent events, there's a little bit more, but I've covered most of it. But we are love. We are eternal beings, that the energy of the universe, everything is energy, and everything is made of the same stuff, which is love energy. So when you understand what unity consciousness really means, you also simultaneously understand that that codependent relationships and the old paradigm is all based on, and the ego and survival and the financial system is all 100% based on separation consciousness. So if we are going to, if a person chooses that they want to move along, they want to self-evolve, they want to self-realize, and they want to move into the new paradigm, into new world, into heaven on earth, into the nirvana state of bliss, then they, by definition, must accept unity consciousness and must internalize it, okay? And make that connection to the higher self again. And then once you do that, you no longer become dependent upon others or circumstances or a new car or a bigger house or $1 million or anything else in order to feel that love, in order to feel fulfilled, in order to feel whole, in order to feel sovereign. And you begin to radiate that and become basically just a giver of that, a radiator of cosmic energy, of love energy, of divine energy, whatever you want to call it, whatever label you want to put on it. It's all the same. So therefore, your greatest goal, which happened to me about 10 years ago, actually, your greatest desire is to find someone to share that with, to give that to, okay? Not to take from, no, the opposite, to give to, okay? Someone who is mature enough and evolved enough to accept that and to accept a relationship based on two wholes, like that article that you mentioned earlier this morning, based on two wholes coming together, making a trinity, really, instead of, you know, my better half, you know, the Medi and Aranha thing, where you have two halves coming together to make a whole. No, you have two wholes that come together, and they make something even greater, or three wholes, or four wholes, okay? You know, it doesn't have to be this thing. Monogamy is based on, from a scientific point of view, it's based on the psychobiology of the female reproductive strategy, okay? And unfortunately, 99.9% of female human beings have absolutely no knowledge or education in this aspect of psychobiology. The female reproductive strategy in all mammals, without exception, in all the great apes, all the mammals, is to get the energy of the most suitable male possible, completely dedicated to the female and her offspring, okay? Whether it be his offspring or not, doesn't matter. All she cares about from a biological point of view is that she gets as much energy from him for protection and support and food supplies, etc., to take care of her offspring. It's a survival mechanism. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it until or unless a human being takes it a little too seriously and demands it and tries to force the male to do something or to do things that he is naturally against, you know, the battle of the sexes, etc. Because the male reproductive strategy, in order to, again, from a scientific, biological point of view, is to produce the greatest number of offspring possible that survive to sexual maturity. The definition of reproductive success in the biological circles, and you can look this up in any textbook, is to bring the greatest number of your own offspring to what's called reproductive maturity, which in the human case would be, you know, 14 to 18 years old, you know. So that is the overriding motivating desire and passion, subconsciously, again, subconsciously, of all human beings. Now, the male reproductive strategy and the female reproductive strategy are, generally speaking, at odds. That's why, you know, but okay, but we won't get into that because that's just opening a huge emotional can of worms.
Yes, but Alexander,
what I mean is that in a higher relationship, none of that matters anymore. In a higher relationships, you're not, your number one priority is not having and raising more little bodies in a material world. Your number one priority is enjoying each other's company, is enjoying each other's fun, and helping your partner to enjoy life in the material realms as much as possible, and yourself enjoying as well. Okay, working together to do that. And so, you know, if you both like monogamy, great. But if you both don't, then great. You know what I mean? It's a personal choice. If you enjoy monogamy, fantastic. If you have the most fun being in a monogamous relationship, awesome. Go for it, you know? Do that and be that. Great. You know, until you change your mind, okay? In linear time. And then,
you know, I think that's a really important, it's just an important key, because I think we're in a bridging time. We're in a bridging time when the old paradigm way of really, you know, these monogamous relationships that lasted a lifetime, but people end up dying of cancer because they're so unhappy, you know, because they've shut down the flow of their being, of being who they are. However, I know some long-term monogamous relationships where the people really are kind of sovereign. They've grown into who they are and expressing that together, and they have a really beautiful flow together. You know, and some of them are ones who have children.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think both, we need to acknowledge, I always feel in these kind of conversations, because I end up in a lot of conversations about Tantra, about new relationship, that we need to acknowledge that wherever a person is at in this flow is perfectly good, that we can be in monogamous relationships and still be expressing our sovereignty. We can choose to be in more open, flowing relationships and still be in our sovereignty. And one is not better or worse than the other. It's all a matter of personal choice and what works for you and what you can find compatibility with someone else.
Yeah, and another thing is that you see the change in the younger generations, that there's a lot more what you would call polygamous relationships that are very successful, that have been happening in the last, say, 10, 15 years. I had a renter. I had renters that were a couple, and they were what they call players, partiers. You know what's the term? I forget the term again. But they brought other people into the relationship sexually, okay, to have fun together. They both enjoyed experiencing other people, okay. And so now, obviously, you know, in this particular case, at least, it was only other women that were brought into the relationship. But the woman involved, the woman of this couple, was basically bisexual. And I had another couple, younger couple even, that rented a room from me for a few days during the Envision Festival a couple of years ago, and from the States. Both of these couples are from the United States, and this younger couple were musicians and everything, and they traveled around the world, and they were of the same support. And I walked into my the kitchen of the duplex unit one morning, and there was early 20-something naked woman in my kitchen, right? So, you know, and she had been brought from the festival to sleep with this couple that night. So, you know, and that was interesting. But you see it in the younger generations, that they're very open to these new flexible relationships.
You know,
and as long as both people are in agreement, hey.
Let me toss out too, I know a lot of younger people, because being out teaching 21st century superhuman workshops, I end up having a lot of young people magnetized to what I'm teaching because they get this stuff really fast. And I actually know a lot of young couples who are monogamous, who just naturally love each other, but also are naturally very sovereign. They are who they are. They're sharing with each other who they are. You know, maybe they're having children, and so they're in this unit, but they're very acknowledging of each other, much more different. It's kind of different from an old paradigm relationship. Pardon?
Yes. Respectful.
Respectful.
You know, you respectful of their partner's own desires and how should I say, predilections.
Yes.
And that See, now you can have a monogamous relationship, for example. These couples had monogamous relationships.
Right.
Except the only difference is that they occasionally brought in others to share that relationship. So, instead of a twosome, it became a threesome for a while, for a brief time. But actually, the relationship, the spiritual and the emotional relationship, was completely monogamous. You see what I mean?
I do.
And so when you say monogamy, you usually mean just sexually. And so there is a difference, though. You can have a sexually monogamous relationship, but you can also have an emotionally and spiritually monogamous relationship where you sexually may go here and there with other people, either together or separately, but the emotional tie remains. And now emotions, that's another subject, whether what dimension emotions fall into, but also as a being that is love. Okay, see, this is a huge issue. Sharing love is the ultimate. Now, what form you share that love in can vary from person to person and group to group and society to society, right? Okay, so it's really, and there's no judgment, it's simply a choice.
Well, let me segue into something here that I think is just a really important part of this topic. And if you've got more to go on your train of thought, do you have more to go on that train of thought?
I have a little bit more to go because of what just happened in the United States regarding homosexual marriage.
Let me just toss this out and we can continue on this thread in a little bit. But I think what this brings up, we are beings of love, and it is natural for us to love everyone around us, and we've really shut that down. And I think some of us who are awakening to that, like one of the things I teach in 21st Century Superhuman is that we offload our blame, fear, judgment, hostility, and control. I mean, those are freaking really big topics, judgment, control, wanting to control someone else. As we begin, Harvard studies say we have 95% of our thought is unconscious. And I say it is these generational patterns that we're carrying around of judgment, control, fear, and hostility. Oh, I've got to maintain my egocentric world. And once we begin letting go of those things and we begin entering into that I am a being flowing in continual love, and when one of these other items comes up, I release it and I enter into love, I begin loving everyone around me. And I can't blame, if you were my partner, I can't blame you because you love everyone else around us too, or why would I want to control you and keep you from loving other people? I think those become these sort of like kind of topics that end up moving in our worlds as we begin stepping into this new way of being. And this level of operating, whether it encompasses, sexual interaction, the other piece of this I wanted to bring up in relationship to what you're talking about is because our sexuality has been so suppressed, we have needs to explore it in different ways, I think. And, everyone's going to be coming. I want to stand in defense of those who really, really consider monogamy critically important, because it can be, it's okay. It's all okay. I'm pretty monogamous. I tend to be like a serial monogamist. I'm not somebody who really enjoys, okay, I'll sleep.
Me too. Same here.
Right. So we're having a discussion about different ways of being that are going to be different for each person. But I think the most important key to that, what you were talking about, the emotional intimacy with one person, is it gives us a way of experiencing divine union. And I call it divine union, which is creator source. It is masculine and feminine. It could be two gay people, a masculine and feminine gay person, but it's those masculine and feminine polarities coming together and experiencing a kind of union that flows through the cosmos. And by taking away all of the barriers and saying, I can be I can be one with you and experience what that is and enter this entirely new explosive state of being. And I think you've had that, I've had it, we've visited about that in our experiences with, you know, various partners. And I think it's really the deepest longing of the heart and the soul and the being, because we have to be one. And then how do we experience the expansion of that union, that oneness through union with another? And then ultimately, my really good friend Teddy and I, she used to always say, Cary, one of these days we're just going to be little bubbles floating through space and having union with all these other bubbles, you know. And really, it is, I mean, right now we're moving out of these ages of darkness that suppressed our sexuality, everything was in that ego, three-dimensional procreation, you know, contractual status. And now, except for, you know, a few people throughout the ages. And so here we are waking up to this being a free-flowing sovereign being and learning how to have an interchange with another that is really at this higher frequency level, and allowing us to step into these stages where we can express this kind of divine union that is then going to flow over into every single thing in our lives. And I've had spiritual friends who said, oh, if you want it too much, you're never going to get it, and, you know, quit wishing for that, and blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, I believe this is some of the deepest drive of our being, you know, and we look for it in different ways. We go to where we are in our consciousness, and we maybe get into relationships in that form. And yet I think there's a part of us that's really, sorry, that's outside my window. There's a part of us that's really seeking this oneness with self, and then the experience of that union with another that is this expression of divine creation. So that's my, you know, thought on that. But
okay, those thoughts, I could spend an hour on just what you said. I know.
We're gonna
okay.
have
but let's go back. Let's go back to the original, because it looks, we might need a part two.
We might need a part two.
But because okay, all contracts are based on separation consciousness, right? And business contracts, financial contracts, marriage contracts as well. What we just saw in the United States is an example. The reason why it was, quote, allowed to take place is because the marriage contract in the Western world especially is nothing more than a legal and financial contract. It is not a love contract. It has nothing to do with love. So what they argued for and what the Supreme Court supported was the legal marriage of homosexual individuals into a couple. Legal. They did not address love. They did not address the social relationships at all. They simply addressed the legal availability of marriage for homosexual couples. That's all. So actually it enforces, it enforces separation consciousness. It enforces the legal systems. It enforces the control systems.
Yes.
Okay? And all these gay couples, okay, and I'm not going to apologize for saying this,
right,
they were focused on separation consciousness while they fought, and that's a violent term, fought for recognition of their right to legally marry. They actually were, it was a very, very excellent, how should I say, PSYOPs program of the controllers.
Absolutely.
The highly intelligent and perceptive ones who, in the think tanks, who discuss these things like we're discussing now. They discuss these for hours on end in their penthouses of their offices. Okay, that's what they're paid to do, millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. They discuss these kinds of things from their perspective, how to reinforce the control paradigm, okay, on society, on the masses. Anyway, so what was good is that it brought to light the difference between love relationships, and legal contracts. Okay, so it's a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I figured this out decades ago about the contractual relationships that marriage really is. Okay, so and then decided after, you know, I left my second wife, I said, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I am not going to support the old paradigm, the material world 3D thinking. I'm not going to support the control systems anymore. I refuse to engage in a time-dependent, obligatory, commitment-oriented, separation consciousness-based relationship any longer. Okay? You want to be with me? I am happy to be together in the moment of now, and we will share, and I will give you love. I will give you all that I am, because I know it can never run out, because I am the conduit of source. Okay? I got nothing to lose here. I will give and give and give. Okay? I don't care. But like the old Hall & Oates song says, you know, you can have my body, but you're not going to get my soul. Okay? But the corollary to that is that my soul is infinite anyway, so you can never own it anyway, right? So as a separate soul, so to speak. So, but the thing is, I'm happy to do that, but I will not say, well, for the next 10 years, yes, I will, you know, I will be with you and only you and support you and financially support you and all these other things, you know, and your children. Sorry. The only obligations that I currently agree with and I am aligned with and I'm happy to do is for my 2 children, okay? Because they're not able to take care of themselves yet in the material realm, so I'm happy to do that for them. Okay, that's the only obligation that I will, you know, make a commitment to, because we're still living in this old paradigm world for at least the next few months, maybe, but we're still there. So until the time that changes and the community reverts to the ancient tribal type of community, where it's the community that raises the children. It's the extended family that raises the children, not only the birth couple, the biological parents, who are usually the youngest in the community and are not yet emotionally or mentally equipped, okay? They don't have the experience to properly raise small children, okay? It's the elders of the community that have the experience and the wisdom to do that, okay? So once the human material 3D, 4D society returns to the ancient ways of raising children, where the responsibility is of the tribe, of the community, not exclusively the individual parents, you know, the specific biological parents, to do that, to provide everything for the child, that's dysfunctional. I mean, look at how dysfunctional Western society is because of this forcing of obligation on the young parents to provide everything for the children and literally segregate them from the rest of society, okay, and from their own aunts and uncles and grandparents and all these in a separate little dwelling, you know, out of the tribe, out of the community in general. I mean, it's made, I don't know if you've read Conversations with God, the 3 books. The 3rd book talks about what they call galactic societies, highly evolved or further evolved galactic societies. They consider it insane for the biological parents to be the exclusive caregivers of the children. They don't even get that. They're like, what are you talking about? It's the whole community and tribe and group that is supposed to raise the children. They're supposed to go and be trained by the elders, okay?
Absolutely.
How can you have teenagers trying to educate children that, I mean, they're not even fully mature themselves emotionally.
Right.
You know, the typical age of maturity for other planetary societies is something like, you know, starting from 25, even in ancient Rome, by the way. My second wife studied law here. And one of the laws, the basic laws of Western society are a combination of common law and civil law. The civil law comes from ancient Rome and the Holy Roman Empire, which still exists, by the way. Okay? Now, one of the things that she studied that I noticed, she said that in ancient Rome, you were not considered a full adult till the age of 25. Okay? Now, that is very interesting because that speaks to the fact that most people, most human beings, especially nowadays, are not fully mature emotionally till at least the age of 25. Now, you and I know that some people are 65 and they're still teenagers in their minds, you know, they're still immature. But generally speaking, you know, that was very interesting to me because I was at that point in my life where I was looking at relationships, my relationship with my second wife and all these different things, and realizing that, you know, my second wife was under 25. And so I was looking at, you know, her immaturity, etc., and realizing, wow, they recognized this thousands of years ago. Yeah. Okay? Why is it that modern human beings have such a problem with recognizing this? See? Well, now I know it's their ego. It's they don't like that. They're like, oh no, you know, we're at 18, you know, we could go out and shoot people and kill people and vote and drink and all these things. We're mature enough, you know. But anyway.
So Alexander, we're bumping into a lot of things here, you know.
Yeah, we're getting away from that.
Basically, our topic
the contracts are. We have to move beyond that contractual kind of separation consciousness thing.
You know, I think we've brought up a lot of periphery subjects, which are really important, which are, you know, we are living in this kind of separation society in the modern world. And when we talk about new galactic communities, I mean, I can just see, you know, my family members who live in a neighborhood and, you know, love where they live and think there's nothing wrong with the world, thinking, well, why are you guys talking about that? You know, and the truth is, potentially the kind of community that we're talking about where people will be more interchanging with one another is a new version of the tribal community. We're not maybe just sitting out in the dirt and, you know, sitting around the campfire drumming, although those things are wonderful to do, but we're having more of a modern, interchangeable, you know, civilization based in love. And we talk, you know, there's many other shows that I've done and you and I will be doing, and I will be doing with others on the fact of our sovereignness, of our expressing sovereignness, both with the financial system and through relationship. How do we do that? You and I are definitely going to have to do, you know, some follow-ups to this on this relationship discussion because it's so important. And let's take this as a baseline and then we can kind of go the next step.
Sure.
And then,
sure. And this, we can also move into parent-child relationships and friendships because relationships are relationships are relationships. Yes. And the intimate relationship is the most emotionally charged. It's the most passionate. But the other, well, I don't know. It's arguable that the parent-child relationship also can be just as you know, volatile. But it's really, really important that as we move into the new paradigm, that we have some kind of clarification as to what that really means in terms of day-to-day life and day-to-day relationships. Because as the new paradigm is about a new style of relationships, which, as we just talked about, is actually a reflection of the ancient style of relationship.
It is.
So it's not necessarily a matter of something completely new. It's simply a matter of getting back to the basics of the who we really are, okay, as eternal spiritual beings having a human experience instead of bodies running around, you know, just trying to survive and make ends meet financially, okay? They're completely diametrically opposed paradigms. And as we move into the new or the higher paradigm, we should call it, with the clarification of what that means in day-to-day activities and relationships is very important for people to have as a thought form.
Yes, and what you're saying
as a reference.
Yes, and what you're saying, we need these reference points because people are suffering. People are suffering in separation. They're suffering in doing it alone. They're suffering in not having more family members gathered together or just community. You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. or they're suffering in relationship where they're having to suppress who they are and live in an old contract. There's so many ways people are suffering in our world, living in separation consciousness. And what you and I are really talking about in relationship is how do we enter into A, our oneness with ourselves, B, our oneness with one another, C, the abundance and the creativity and the creation that comes from that. And these are all spokes of the wheel that the 21st century superhuman community and the naturally better community, which we're part of, are addressing these days. And so we encourage people to listen in to the subsequent episodes of this, of yours and my discussion, Alexander, and because I think it's just a really, really great dialogue, and I love your brilliance, your ability to put these sequential ideas together. It's just a great gift. You know, you have this really logical understanding of how we're moving into the 5D consciousness, or the, you know, the higher consciousness of our being. And as I say in 21st century superhuman, we are what the ancients called the shift of the ages. We've moved into greater fields of light according to NASA. Our DMT, our pineal glands and pituitary glands are being activated, and we are standing on the brink of the greatest evolutionary leap in human history. So we, in our discussions with each other, in the way we put ourselves out to the public, are acknowledging this evolutionary leap. We are living it ourselves. We are offering tools and information and how-tos. And I'm so excited to be part of a community and a tribe, like the Naturally Better tribe and community. And they say, you know, in the tribe and community that you and I are part of, in our friendship, in our alliance with one another, I love the quote about, you know, when there's devastation on the earth, the rainbow tribe will appear, the rainbow warriors, the tribe that will bring in the change. So here we are in that. Go ahead.
Yes, yeah, it's happening. It's happening now.
Yes.
All over. I'll give a reference to the one blog post that I wrote called Twin Flames, Soulmates, and Oneness. Which I also quoted in the, which I also referred to in the other radio show we did last year, I believe it was, or earlier this year, that touched on these subjects, really just touched on them. So, because that basically lays out the fact that we are all souls, and we're all twin flames, really, in the end. We are all one, and we are all twin flames. And so, you know, and the primary objective of anyone that wants to transcend or ascend this material world paradigm and this matrix is to unify the male and female energies within themselves first, their own internal twin flame, merge with that, and then we can merge as wholes with others and amplify and expand. Like, I like that metaphor of the bubbles coming together. You know, that's really fun. I like that a lot, of your friend. And so that's what's happening. And yeah, I look forward to moving more forward and progressing in all these areas. And you know, I've had experience in all this, of course, so you know, it'll be fun to relate that experience in any future shows we do.
Cool, awesome. And I will do my best to put the links to the blog post you just mentioned and your blog so people can find you, to 21st Century Superhuman. Follow us, turn your TVs off, but listen to the good news, inform yourselves, educate yourselves, and let's take the steps together into this new emerging, we call it the next evolutionary leap of humanity. Okay, many blessings, my brother. We shall see each other soon, and see everyone out in our viewing audience soon.
Okay.
Much love to all.